Barron Trump walked into court as a witness, but was publicly humiliated for wearing a simple silver cross around his neck. What they didn't expect was that he wasn't just the son of Donald Trump. He was a young man who refused to compromise his faith. The judge had already abandoned neutrality, but by the end of the day, it wouldn't be Barron who stood trial, it would be him. The trial was scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. sharp, but every seat in the gallery had been filled well before then. This wasn't just any case. It was the kind of proceeding that made headlines before a single word was spoken. When Barron Trump stepped into the courtroom, the shift in energy was instantaneous. Some people turned their heads, others whispered. Flashes from cameras were quickly silenced by bailiffs. The son of President Donald Trump was not unfamiliar to public attention, but today was different. He walked with a calm resolve, not like someone who had grown up in the spotlight, but like a young man fully aware of what he carried around his neck, a simple silver cross, glinting under the courtroom lights. Barron took his seat near the witness stand, accompanied by his legal team. He knew this case wasn't just about the corporate fraud he'd witnessed. It was about him. It was about the weight his last name carried. And most of all, it was about the man behind the bench, Judge Gerald Prescott. Prescott had a reputation. Brilliant, but bitter. And privately, infamously anti-Trump. He had made no secret of his disdain for the former president, and today, with Barron sitting in his courtroom, he saw an opportunity to make a statement. As the courtroom settled, Prescott adjusted his robe and peered down at Barron with a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Trump," he said, his voice steady but cold, "this is a courtroom, not a cathedral. Religious symbolism has no place in here. I ask that you remove that cross before we proceed." A hush swept across the room. A journalist's pen stopped mid-scribble. Barron looked up, locking eyes with the judge. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he said calmly, "this cross is not a symbol of provocation. It's a part of who I am. And the Constitution gives me the right to wear it." Prescott's face tightened. "You're free to believe what you like, Mr. Trump. But in my courtroom, there are rules. Either remove the cross or leave the premises." Barron didn't flinch. He slowly reached for the cross and held it between his fingers. "I won't remove it," he said. "And I won't leave. I'm here to testify, not to apologize for what I believe." For a moment, silence blanketed the room. Then, a quiet gasp from the gallery. Barron's words weren't loud, but they echoed with defiance. Judge Prescott leaned forward. "You want to challenge the rules of this court, Mr. Trump?" Barron's answer was simple. "I want to remind this court that the rules don't override the Constitution." It was then that people began to realize this was no longer a simple witness testimony. This was a collision between belief and authority, between personal faith and political vengeance. The cross around Barron's neck wasn't just jewelry. It had just become the most dangerous object in the courtroom. And the trial hadn't even started yet. Judge Prescott's gavel slammed against the wood, but the echoes of Barron Trump's defiance still lingered in the air. Tension crackled like static electricity. What should have been a routine financial fraud case was quickly spiraling into something far more volatile. Barron remained seated, his posture calm but unyielding. The silver cross still hung proudly over his navy blue shirt, glinting slightly whenever the light shifted. He wasn't trying to start a war, but he wouldn't retreat from one, either. Prescott, now visibly agitated, cleared his throat. "We will proceed. But let it be on record that Mr. Trump has chosen to disregard this court's directive." Whispers surged again through the audience. The lead attorney representing Barron rose. "Your Honor, before we begin, we'd like to submit a procedural objection." Prescott rolled his eyes. "Here we go." "Our concern," the attorney said, placing a file on the bench, "is that this court may not be acting with the impartiality that the Constitution demands. We've uncovered evidence suggesting personal bias on your part toward the witness, based on his surname and public identity." Prescott stiffened. "That's a serious accusation." "Yes, it is. And we have serious proof." The attorney tapped the folder. A bailiff stepped forward to deliver it. Prescott opened it reluctantly. Inside were several printed screenshots and email threads, correspondence between Prescott and an anonymous political blog. In one highlighted message, the judge had written, "If one more Trump walks into my courtroom flaunting God and patriotism, I swear I'll make an example out of them." Gasps erupted from the gallery. Even the court stenographer momentarily paused, then quickly resumed typing. Prescott tried to keep his composure. This is completely irrelevant. An invasion of privacy. These were private communications. The attorney interrupted. That reveal a clear pattern of ideological bias, Your Honor. That directly affects the credibility of your rulings in this trial. Barron sat silently, watching. He didn't gloat, didn't flinch. He let the moment speak for itself. But it wasn't over. The defense attorney from the other side stood. This is absurd, he sneered. This trial is about corporate fraud, not a judge's tweets. They're using this moment to turn the witness into a political martyr. Prescott seized on the moment. Agreed. We will proceed with the original case. Mr. Trump, approach the stand. Barron stood up and walked toward the witness box. As he passed Prescott's bench, their eyes met again. You will answer only what is asked, Prescott warned, voice sharp. No speeches. No moral grandstanding. I came here to speak the truth, Barron replied. Not to perform. As he was sworn in, another attorney quietly set up a small speaker on the prosecution's table. A flash drive was inserted. They were saving their most powerful evidence for the right moment. The questioning began. Barron calmly described the financial discrepancies he'd uncovered in a tech company linked to the case. How inflated invoices and hidden bank accounts pointed to deep corruption. His voice was steady, but each sentence landed like a blow. Prescott looked increasingly uncomfortable. The jury listened intently. But just as the prosecutor signaled the speaker be turned on, Prescott slammed his gavel again. This recording is inadmissible. Where was it obtained? The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. Why so nervous, Your Honor? You haven't even heard it yet. And then, the audio played. Don't let the Trump kid talk too much. Redirect him. If he brings up that church donation scandal, shut it down. I'll back you up. It was Prescott's voice. The courtroom erupted. And for the first time, Prescott looked afraid. The audio clip ended, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. For a long moment, not a single person moved. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to have quieted, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Judge Prescott sat frozen, his jaw clenched and his hands trembling slightly over the bench. The voice on the recording had been unmistakably his, and worse, it had confirmed what many had only suspected. This wasn't about order in the courtroom. It wasn't about the sanctity of the law. It was about vengeance. About politics. About using a courtroom as a weapon. Barron sat still, eyes focused forward, his silver cross resting calmly against his chest. He hadn't raised his voice once. He hadn't made dramatic gestures. But he had stood taller than anyone in that room. The prosecutor stood slowly. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, we formally request your immediate recusal from this trial. Furthermore, we submit a motion for a federal investigation into judicial misconduct. Murmurs rose among the gallery. Reporters were already typing furiously. The moment was becoming national news in real time. Prescott stood, wobbling slightly, gripping the sides of his bench. This court is adjourned, he started, but his voice cracked mid-sentence. A federal marshal had entered the courtroom, standing quietly by the side wall. Judge Gerald Prescott, the marshal said firmly. By order of the Department of Justice, you are hereby suspended pending investigation. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Prescott didn't argue. He simply nodded, turned, and walked toward the side exit like a man who had aged 10 years in a minute. As the courtroom emptied, Barron remained seated for a few seconds longer. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He simply placed his hand gently over the cross and breathed in. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed. News outlets rushed to broadcast the fall of a once-respected judge. But more importantly, they were talking about Barron Trump, not as a political figurehead, but as a young man who stood firm when others would have folded. And in a world full of noise, his silence had spoken louder than anything else. Barron Trump didn't just show up in court. He stood for something greater. Faith, dignity, and the courage to speak the truth in the face of pressure. In a world quick to judge, he reminded us what quiet strength really looks like. If this story inspired you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful moments, and share your thoughts below. What would you have done in his place? Your voice matters. Let it be heard.